to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up having animals and then we fostered during the
Mhm.
pandemic and ended up falling in love with our fifth foster. So now Sadie is ours. So she's been officially a member of the family for a while, but absolutely, like it's so much joy and so much fun. But
Like it's worth it. Like it's obviously worth it at the
oh,
end of the day, but
yeah,
the
like a four-legged kid with
for sure, but the
one.
responsibility level between a cat and a dog is astronomical. It's so different.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm definitely more of
absolutely.
a cat person because they require a lot less
Way less
work.
maintenance, way less maintenance. Like you can
Although
leave the food
dogs are very good companions compared to, but cats are much easier.
way easier. You don't have to walk them. Like you can get they have litter boxes that change themselves, like fully
I
automatic and
know. I've
food
seen those.
dispensers.
Yeah.
You could leave your cat alone for months. And as long as they have food and their like litter box is being cleaned, they would not care. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
I always see the videos of them like pushing things off tables and they have such big personalities still. So
And they know what they're doing, those guys.
yeah.
They know what they're doing and they're so smart. They're so smart, those little. And he like, I get so mad at him because I know he looks at me and he knows what he's doing. Like same thing with dogs. They know what they're doing is wrong. They just want to piss you off.
Yeah, they can learn to push your buttons, push the boundaries. They're smart creatures, absolutely.
No, for sure.
Yeah. What about you, Shanza? Is a pet in your future anytime soon?
I really want to get a cat. I think Joe just convinced me to get a cat. But no, I always wanted one. I had one growing up, actually. My mom used to have a cat, and yeah, I kind of miss him. But it's hard to replace your pets, eh?
Yeah, they can never be replaced.
Hmm.
It's just
Or
it's well, it's like when you have like another kid, right? Like you don't love the second kid at like the same amount. It's just you love the pets the same way, and you just find different ways to love them. I don't think you have to replace your
yeah,
old pet. It's just providing you new joy and comfort.
Yeah, 100%.
absolutely.
Speaking
It
of
is
getting
hard
new
though
people in
because
your
they
life,
don't live very long, and there's a lot of grief involved in owning a dog,
Yeah.
especially because they're only good for 12 years, and then I have to move on.
Yeah, I saw a quote or some sort of, some post about how they spend such a short amount of time with you in your life, but you are their entire life to them. And, that positivity that you provided them with a good life and that you loved them and you cared for them and nurtured them. Always trying to remember that, especially in the later years of a pet's life. But it's hard, like you said, Jonathan. There's no correct way to grieve or to feel. And a lot of people, once they feel that grief for the first time, they're scared or hesitant to, have to go through that again or risk going through that again.
I also think that's a good transition into today's topic, dating after divorce, going through the grief in one period and, you know,
Well done,
entering the
Joseph.
right? Entering the
You
next
nailed that
phase of your life,
transition. That was
right?
great.
Yeah.
Wasn't even planned.
Segue master.
Wasn't even planned. Um, with that, welcome everyone to the Family Law Now After Hours podcast session webinar. We still don't have a name for it. But today's topic is dating after divorce, legal and emotional aspects. Please note to our viewers that the purpose of this series is to discuss general information on separation, divorce, and other family law matters. Any information provided here should not be construed as legal advice, and as always, please use the Q&A feature to submit your comments or questions at any time throughout the show. We love reading them, and we love when our audience interacts with us. It makes it a lot better, a lot more engaging. And as always, if you have any questions regarding your specific matter, please call our office or a lawyer in your area to book a consultation to receive tailored advice. It's really important that you're receiving tailored advice and not just legal information. And stay tuned until the end as we will be sharing how you can schedule a free 20-minute meeting with one of our lawyers. Now, on to introductions with the amazing people on our screen. We have Jonathan Paynter, and he is a registered social worker and psychotherapist who works in the family law system, completing parenting plans, assessments, voice of the child reports, family mediation, and collaborative family law in private practice. He also provides psychotherapy, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, family therapy, and couples counseling, for both children and adults. And as well, he is on the board of directors of the Ontario Association for Family Mediation, and he holds the executive position as treasurer of the board. And he's also on the board of the Collaborative Practice Durham Region. We have Steph. Steph was called to the bar in 2022 and is an associate lawyer here at the firm, where she is committed to assisting our clients through what is traditionally a difficult time. And as always, her goal is to make sure the process is easier in any way that she can help. Steph graduated with honors from Queen's University in 2018, and she obtained her law degree from the University of Liverpool in 2020, graduating with first-class honors. During her time at law school, she was honored to receive awards for her academic achievements, including the Family Law Prize, and this achievement is awarded for the best assessment performance in family law that is sponsored by the University of Liverpool School of Law and Social Justice. We also have Shanza. Shanza is a dedicated family lawyer with a strong focus on compassionate and effective legal representation. Her background in business management enhances her strategic approach to legal matters. She excels in negotiation, achieving favorable settlements through strategic dialogue and strong advocacy for her clients. She prioritizes clear communication, ensuring that clients are informed and empowered throughout the legal process. Last but not least is me. I am a compassionate family lawyer driven by a deep desire to support families through challenging times. With a background in commerce, I bring a strong negotiation, analytical, and critical thinking skill to my legal practice. During my articling period, I gained confidence in handling a wide range of family law matters, and I emphasize active listening, clear communication, and empathy, fostering a comfortable environment for clients. I am certified as a collaborative family lawyer with the Ontario Association of Collaborative Professionals, and thus I offer clients an alternative dispute resolution approach to avoid court. Outside of work, I'm a dedicated Toronto Maple Leaf and LA Rams fan, and I enjoy playing hockey and watching comedy movies. And with that, that is our introduction for today. How did I do?
Perfect, Joe. I
Right,
need
fantastic.
you are my source of Toronto Maple Leafs. How are they doing?
Mid, but we did have a
Do
big
you have
win
to ask?
yesterday.
Do you have to ask?
We had a big win yesterday against Winnipeg, so
I did hear. So
third in the
on that
division.
upward trajectory.
Third in the division. That's what we like to see.
Of
Early
course.
days, early days.
Yeah.
That is
So yeah, so like Joe mentioned, today is it's a super interesting topic. And Joe, I'm actually gonna kick things back over to you. Do you mind talking a little bit about the legal implications of dating during a separation or a divorce?
Yeah, sure. So I sort of divided this segment into sort of three aspects. And there is more. It's just given the short time we have today, we have to keep our conversation a little bit concise. So the three aspects, I've divided this topic into our uh, spousal support, parenting, and property division, because those are really the three main that may or are even implicated during the dating process while someone is going through a separation. So with respects to spousal support, when someone begins dating or they enter a new relationship while they're still separated, it can sometimes affect spousal support arrangements. So in Ontario, spousal support is generally based on need, the ability to pay, as well as past contributions to the family. And when we talk about spousal support, there's two realms aside from the contractual obligation, which we don't really discuss in great detail because that relates more to what's agreed upon between the parties and in agreements and with the court. But really, the two main areas of spousal support that we speak about are what's called compensatory and non-compensatory support, also known as needs-based. And the compensatory aspect of spousal support deals with prior familial relationships and how the dynamics worked in the relationship, whether one spouse was a stay-at-home parent, did they make career sacrifices, things of that nature. And then we deal with needs-based spousal support. So that deals with whether or not there's economic disparity between the two spouses. Maybe one person is dealing with a health condition that doesn't allow them to work. So there's different factors that are taken into that consideration as well. But what what I'm trying to get at and try to tie it all together is that if a new partner, so a new partner is someone who is with one of the original spouses or common law partners, if they provide a significant financial support, or they even share living expenses, the former spouse may argue that the recipient's need for support has decreased, right? And this could lead to a court revisiting the spousal support arrangement in what's known as a material change. So if the payor spouse believes, and they have evidence to suggest that the recipient spouse is now not needed for, like, if their need for support has decreased, they will bring a motion forward asking for the courts to revisit the spousal support arrangement. Um, that's not to say that, Ontario courts usually avoid penalizing individuals simply for dating or cohabitating. And, any request to change spousal support must provide strong evidence of a decreased need. That's really important. That's the material change that needs to be implemented, or at least needs to be shown that that's been implemented. With respects to parenting, we've heard it a million times on this podcast, but family courts prioritize the child's best interests. So dating during separation could potentially impact parenting arrangements if a new relationship affects the child's welfare. So courts will assess the new partner's character, the history of the relationship, as well as their maybe personal history, as well as the relationship with the child. And if the new partner has a history of behavior that's deemed risky, or if their presence disrupts the child's environment, a former spouse may raise concerns that can influence decision-making and parenting time rights. Generally speaking, dating itself isn't grounds for parenting changes unless the new relationship is proven to negatively impact the child. That means that the new relationship has raised cause for concern. Maybe there's a history of violence. Maybe the person's been charged with crimes relating to assault of either their former spouse or children. Maybe there's illicit drug use in the home. There's a lot of things that factor into whether or not this new partner's character or history has a negative impact on the child. The third sort of area that I believe is referenced greatly with respects to the legal implications is property division. So under the law, property division primarily concerns the property and debts that were accumulated up to the date of separation, and that's starting from the date of marriage, or if it's a married spouse, then the date of marriage, the date of separation, and that's what forms the net family property. So dating during separation usually does not really impact this process unless the new partner's assets or income becomes commingled with those of the separating spouse. So it's always best to keep finances separate, especially when someone's going through a separation. Additionally, some things that often are not brought under people's radars, but it usually finds its way there, is that sometimes if a new partner contributes financially to or maintaining or improving property that is subject to division, this could create some complications down the line. So it's really important that if this is happening, that it's very well documented and that there's maybe some sort of agreement in place to avoid disputes down the line. So those are the three main areas that I would say have some sort of legal implication while a person's dating during their separation.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, that's such a great overview and a really key component that people might not turn their mind to with respect to property division. If you're separated and you've been separated for maybe 2 or 3 years, but you haven't divided your assets or your properties, one spouse is still living in the matrimonial home and their new partner now moves in, that can create a lot of intertwined ideas and concepts and complications that they might not have considered at the outset.
Yeah, especially if they're making renovations to the basement or putting out a new deck or building a pool. There's so many things that need to be considered.
Yeah,
I've
100%.
seen lots of conflicts where, blended families, kids are now living in the basement, and there's an argument about whether the basement window is, according to the building code in Ontario, an egress window, for example. There's a lot of conflicts that happen when new families come together that, you probably wouldn't see otherwise.
Yeah, 100%. And that sort of leads back into, specifically the impacts of new relationships on parenting arrangements. One of the ways that we see this, playing out is when it comes to parenting dynamics. So Joe sort of touched on, what the courts might look at if there is a new partner in the mix. Is this new partner contributing to the stability, the environment that the children are exposed to? And, if you are in court and there's question around the new partner's behavior, lifestyle, it might be scrutinized. It might be, brought up in order to assess whether this new partner and living in that sort of environment positively or negatively impacts the child or children. So, if a new relationship appears to enhance a child's well being, whether that be providing another emotional support person, a stable environment, another positive role model, those sort of circumstances, benefits the child. It's to, the entire family unit's benefit. However, if, like Joseph mentioned, the new relationship comes with emotional turmoil, risk of exposing the child to abuse, whether it's witnessing abuse between a parent and the new partner, or receiving abuse directly, whether it's emotional, physical, that's obviously going to be a cause for concern. So ultimately, the decisions around parenting arrangements are primarily guided by the best interests of the child standard. But that being said, blended families and new partnerships, they're a way of life. You can't expect two separating spouses to never date again, to never repartner, to never, take the opportunity to move on, grow, and, find happiness, if that be with another person again. So when that does happen and we have blended families, scheduling conflicts can come up. Things that parents may not have considered or foreseen at the time of separation. Will the child or the children be residing with the new partner? Will they be helping with transportation or parenting exchanges? How will the involvement of this new partner impact the already existing co-parenting dynamics? If from the start, if you're negotiating a separation agreement, perhaps you would want to turn your mind to narrowing down or agreeing on a process for introducing new serious partners to children. That sort of terminology or that sort of process can then be incorporated into your separation agreement. But then, if there's a certain milestone that you hit where you've maybe been dating somebody for 6 months and it's really becoming serious, maybe that's kind of the situation where it would spark a conversation around introducing that new partner to the children. I'm sure we'll touch on it more throughout today, but consideration should also be provided to the kids, how old they are, how it's going to influence them. If you're dating around multiple different people, is that going to confuse the child to introduce those, temporary partners? Should it be reserved for something that's, has potential to be more long lasting, more stable, to not maybe provide confusion to young kids or, spark conflict that way? Another way we see new relationships impacting parenting is just the level of communication. Perhaps at the start, at the outset, you have good communication with your ex-partner, but then an involvement of a new partner can change that dynamic, whether it be jealousy, or on the other hand, it could also improve collaboration. It really depends on how the parties and their new partners react. Ultimately, if you have communication guidelines, you're able to set emotions aside and establish healthy boundaries. That's only going to, assist and aid in fostering a positive blended family co-parenting relationship. Jumping into some other legal considerations that new partners can kind of spark and to kind of turn your mind to is if a new partnership, a new relationship will lead to a significant change in one of the parents' living situations, especially so much so that it disrupts the existing parenting schedule. So let's say parents A and B, they have a shared schedule where the children go back and forth between homes, but parent A has repartnered. and they spend most of their time at their new partner's home, which is maybe over an hour, 2 hours away. This could significantly impact how the children travel between the houses, not only for commuting for parenting exchanges, but also, schooling, school district, extracurriculars, so many of those things that kind of trickle down from relocating or having a change in residence. We did speak a few weeks ago about relocation, but just so I won't go too far into that, but just to bear in mind that if a change in your residence does significantly impact the other party's parenting time, it can constitute as a relocation, and then there are special procedures and processes in place in terms of obtaining consent. The last thing I will highlight, or two more things I'll highlight actually. Parental alienation. That's another thing that unfortunately can come up, usually sparked by maybe jealousy or emotions when a new partner is involved. So the courts do take such issues as parental alienation very seriously, so they may intervene to ensure that each parent has a healthy relationship with the child. And the last thing is child support. So new partners generally do not significantly impact child support obligations. So if parent A is receiving child support from parent B and they repartner, it doesn't mean that parent B's child support will be reduced or terminated. Child support is calculated using both parents' income and the parenting schedule to produce table child support, which is your month-to-month child support, as well as a breakdown in sharing special expenses. So if a new partner wants to take the kids on a trip or buy them clothes, or whatever financial contribution they want to make, it's only a positive benefit to the child, and it doesn't mean that the parent who is paying child support gets out of that obligation. So those are just some of the considerations that, we see come up, especially in having conversations with clients around new partners and sort of issues that, may be triggered from that new partnership.
Yeah, I like that comment you made, Steph, about putting something in your separation agreement about reintroducing kids to new partners. I think that's a very, very clever thing to do. And just as a general rule, I would recommend everybody who is separated and dating, make sure that you tell the other parent before you introduce the kids, just as a courtesy, because there's no law out there saying you have to do it, but if you don't do it, people get upset and angry, and conflict is really bad for kids. So try to be upfront about it with your ex and let them know in advance. And obviously that's not including extreme situations where there might be a danger to informing the other person, but those are very, very rare cases. But in general, make sure that you tell your ex early that you're dating, and that you intend to introduce the kids at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find it can help when parents are on the same page about having that conversation. So then if, a child comes to the other parent's house and says, I met, Bob, mom or dad's new partner, it's not, this shock to the other parent, and, putting them in sort of a difficult position. You're able to have a plan on how to tell the child if questions come up, how to address them. Yeah, absolutely. And, post-divorce and entering into a relationship, once the divorce is finalized, Joe, I know you sort of talked briefly about some financial considerations, but do you mind going a little bit deeper into those?
Yeah, sure. So, I feel like a lot of the topics today are going to be a little bit repeated only because there's just so much to cover. But with respects to financial considerations, when a party is entering a new relationship, post-divorce, Steph, you spoke about it already, the impact on spousal and child support. So spousal and child support arrangements are determined based on, like I said, we said either compensatory or a non-compensatory basis. But generally speaking, when we're speaking about spousal and child sort of together, they're determined based on financial need, ability to pay of the payor, and as always, the child's best interests. So if the recipient of spousal support remarries or enters a common law relationship, as I mentioned earlier, their new partner's income may influence the assessment of their financial need, the recipient's financial need. And as I mentioned previous, courts may actually revisit spousal support if the new relationship significantly reduces the recipient's expenses. However, like I said, this impact isn't automatic, right? It's not something that's automatic that the courts will do. Courts require the parties to bring, or at least the party who believes that there is a significant reduction in the recipient's expenses, they require them to bring a motion for support modification. So asking to bring a motion to change. And again, substantial evidence must be demonstrated that the new relationship has changed the financial need of the recipient. Child support is generally unaffected by, like as Steph mentioned, is generally unaffected by a recipient's new relationship, since it's based solely on the biological parent's obligations. I'm going to speak to step parents later on in the show and how that can sometimes influence child support obligations, but generally speaking, it's based solely on the biological parent's obligations. However, there's always a however. If the new partner contributes financially to the child's needs, it could indirectly influence the amount or terms of support. As well as, or I should say, aside from the impact on spousal and child support, there's also an impact on benefits and taxes. So in Ontario, entering a common law relationship after divorce requires reporting to the CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, as that affects tax status as well as eligibility for tax credits. We spoke about the tax implications and tax in and of itself a few sessions ago, so I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of it. I'm just going to provide a general overview for our audience today who maybe missed our discussion on tax a couple weeks ago. But common law status is recognized when a couple has cohabited for 12 continuous months or they share a child together. That can either be by birth or by adoption. And cohabitation impacts government benefits, for example, the Canada Child Benefit, as well as the Ontario Child Benefit. And the CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, recalculates these benefits based on combined household income, which can either decrease or increase the amount depending on the new partner's financial status. So that's something to take into consideration. And plus, if the new partner has children of their own, tax credits for dependents may also shift, particularly if both parties have parenting arrangements affecting their combined family income. So that's really important to take into consideration with respect to the impact on government benefits and taxes. Third, I'm going to speak to property and debt. So in Ontario, every province is different with respects to common law relationships, but in Ontario, common law relationships do not automatically grant property rights to shared assets upon separation. So what that means, if one partner acquires or substantially improves assets, the other may claim a financial interest in that only if they can prove direct financial contribution or something what's called unjust enrichment. So it's a claim in equity you're making. And so to manage future financial rights and responsibilities, many couples in Ontario draft what's called cohabitation agreements. So this is done after divorce, and maybe you're cohabiting with a new partner, you're not married yet. It doesn't matter if you think about getting married, this cohabitation agreement is really important as they outline expectations regarding property ownership, debt responsibilities, asset division, and they all those combined provide protection against potential future claims. And what's really a good characteristic of these cohabitation agreements is that even if you're dating this person, you move in together, you have a settled relationship together, you're common law, and you draft this cohabitation agreement, or whether you don't actually draft the agreement, you get lawyers to draft it, because we've spoken about in the past about the effect of invalidity of these agreements. But what's really great about cohab agreements is that if you decide to get married, these can turn into a marriage contract. So all in all, I would say that the big financial considerations when entering into a new relationship post-divorce is the impact on spousal and child support, number one. Number two, the impact on government benefits and taxes. And number three, dealing with property and debt.
Thanks, Joe. And I'm actually going to switch things up. I know we sort of have an outline, but that segues nicely into just doing a little bit more on spousal support obligations and the effects of a new relationship. So like Joe mentioned, under the current law, remarriage or repartnership doesn't automatically terminate spousal support. However, support can be reduced and sometimes terminated. It needs to be done through whether that be a court application or a motion to change. Much of the consideration that the court will look to is going to depend on the type of support claim. So like Joe mentioned, we have compensatory or a needs-based claim. They'll also take a look at other factors such as, how long was the marriage at the outset? Does the rule of 65 apply? The rule of 65 is where the length of the marriage plus the age of the support recipient, if together those values is or is above 65, support is deemed to be indefinite. Now, indefinite can be a very terrifying word, especially, when you're going through a separation. It doesn't mean forever. It just means unspecified. So for an unspecified amount of time until there is a material change in circumstance. That kind of comes full circle back to repartnerships. If this repartnership provides such financial stability, an increase in the standard of living for the recipient, that could be a significant material change in circumstance that sparks this review, this variation, or even sometimes termination. So, like I said, the argument usually hinges on the idea that the recipient's financial situation has improved due to the new partnership, and then the court will assess whether it does kind of meet that threshold of a material change. And it's always very fact specific. So that's sort of if you're in the court system or you're turning to the court system for a review or termination of spousal support stemming from a new partnership. There's also other reasons for a variation or a termination, but today we're just focusing on new partnerships, so I'll just stick with that. If you're not in court and you have a separation agreement, or perhaps you are in the works of negotiating a separation agreement, something you may want to consider is stipulating provisions that spark a termination or a variation in support. So often separating spouses will include that spousal support ends automatically. It terminates upon upon the recipient spouse's remarriage. Sometimes they will include a provision that spousal support may terminate after cohabitating with a new partner for, X number of years, whether that be 2, 3, whatever the parties want to agree to. So that's another thing, if you're not in court, to turn to your separation agreement, see what's drafted, what the provisions outline in order to turn your mind to changing or varying support should a partnership occur. If you're in the works of drafting a separation agreement, perhaps that's something you do want to include or turn your mind to when drafting. So that's kind of wraps up our financial component, the support component. Switching gears here now, Jonathan, I'm gonna go to you. We talked about the money and all these kind of legal implications, but what are the emotional challenges that individuals starting a new relationship might be faced with, especially, through separation or after divorce?
Yeah, there's lots to consider, Steph. So remember that separation and divorce is not just an event in your life. It's a process that unfolds over time. If you look at it from a family systems theory, it's the family reconfiguring itself from, say your standard 2-child family, you've got 2 parents, 2 kids, and now you're transitioning to 2 parents, 1 kid in 2 separate homes. There's also reconfiguring of friendships, of extended family members. There's a lot of changes that go on in the family system itself, and then also within the individual, right? It's really, really tough to go through a separation. There were a couple of psychologists that came up with this life stress index, they call it, and they add up all the most stressful events that you have in your life. And the number one most stressful event on their scale was death of a child or a spouse. And number 2 and 3 were divorce and separation. So it's a very, very stressful event in your life. You're probably going to need some time to recover from it, no matter how happy you are to see the end of the relationship. It is an emotional journey, and there's going to probably be some healing going on. I liken it to, when I'm working with my psychotherapy clients, I liken it to a physical injury. When you break your leg, you can't go out and do a run or a hike the next day because your leg's broken, and it's going to hurt like heck for a while that leg heals. Eventually, you're going to get back to normal. Maybe you've still got a bit of pain in there, or a limp, or it didn't heal quite perfectly, or you got a scar or something. But it's a functional leg again. And the same thing happens with our emotions when we go through such a stressful event, the separation or divorce. It's an emotional injury, a psychological injury that takes some time to heal from. So I'm going to strongly recommend that if you are going through this, get help. That's what psychotherapists are there for. They make a big difference. I'm not just saying that to promote my own practice as a psychotherapist. There is research to back this up. People who go through therapy after divorce or separation, they tend to have better emotional health. They're less likely to suffer from depression or anxiety. Their progress through the grief process is accelerated. And because they're more grounded and emotionally stable, it actually improves their parenting. It improves their co-parenting because they're less likely to lose their temper with the other person because they're feeling better about themselves. And remember that, there's a lot of reasons why divorce and separation are so stressful. One of them is because it's often a really big blow to our self-esteem. We think we're often in these marriages for many years, and we think we're going to be with this person for the rest of our lives. And most people's wedding vows have something to do with of growing old together and being together till death do you part, for example. And then all of a sudden your life takes a sharp right-hand turn and you're going through a separation that you may never envision. It can be a really big blow to your self-esteem. So that's going to take some time to heal. So therapy is one of the best ways to do that. Make sure that you're engaging a lot of self-care. So exercise, getting good sleep, spending time with loved ones, taking breaks from work, using your vacation days, taking sick days when you need them, doing other things that are positive for your emotional health, like yoga, or going to get massages, or going to see funny movies, or whatever brings you joy and pleasure. Go out and do that more, because you're going to need to balance out all the stress that's in your life. When you're thinking about starting a new relationship, there's a lot of considerations to make before you kind of leap into one. One is making sure that you're healing from whatever happened in your past relationship, and remember that healing isn't like it's not like a cut that you get that it bleeds for a bit and then it heals and then it's gone and you're completely cured. You don't have a scar or anything. It's fine. This is going to leave some emotional scars. You're going to heal around those scars and still be able to function despite that psychological injury that you got through the separation. But it's really important that you address any feelings of guilt or shame that you experience because of the loss of the marriage or the relationship, and deal with any self-esteem issues that you have. And when you're looking for a new person, focus on finding the right relationship, not necessarily the right person. There's like a Hollywood trope that you're going to go out there and find your Prince Charming or your Princess Charming, and they're going to sweep you off your feet. You're going to fall in love, and the rest is just going to be gravy. It's going to be, happily ever after. But remember, relationships take work, and whatever happened in your past relationship did not work. So it's really important for you to think about, what didn't work, what did work, what do I want, what patterns that I saw in my old relationship do I want to continue, and what things do I want to stop. So maybe there was, for example, really negative cycles of conflict where people were yelling and throwing coffee mugs at each other and that kind of stuff. And you don't want that in a new relationship. Or maybe there are patterns that you do want to repeat, because we're often very good at sort of vilifying our ex and saying that, after the separation, there was nothing good about my ex, there's nothing good about that relationship. Chances are that's probably not true. There were probably some good things, and it's really important to see through the anger and the pain and the hurt and the grief, to see that, oh yeah, there were some aspects of that relationship that were good, and I want to keep doing those in my new relationship. And then maybe there were some patterns that were missing that you want to see more of. A lot of people complain about, lack of sex or lack of fun, or they're not physically affectionate with their spouse, and that was one of the things that led to the separation. So maybe those are the things you want to think about having more of in your next relationship, and finding someone who can meet you halfway on those topics. The other thing to keep in mind is that we often suffer from a lack of trust in other people and ourselves when we're entering into a second marriage or new relationship post divorce or separation. So those again are things that you're going to want to work through in therapy, or talking to your best friend or your mom or your brother or sister, whoever is someone who's good to talk to you about, to work some of those things out. I support everything that all of you have said up to now, and I would really, really strongly recommend that if you are going to get into a new relationship, make sure you get a cohabitation agreement first, because unfortunately, there's a higher percentage of second marriages that end in divorce than first marriages. It's about 40% for first marriages, about 60% for second marriages. So make sure that your assets are protected for the sake of your kids. If you bring a house into the new relationship, make sure that you have an agreement that says that, if the relationship ends, you get it back, or you get the value of the house back, so that you can pass that wealth on to your kids, and that you're not ending the second marriage and fighting about everything all over again, and spending all this money on court fees and all this kind of stuff, only to find yourself in the same place that you were after the end of your first marriage. So those are some of the main considerations I would consider. I think the other thing that I just want to add quickly is think about the kids. Make sure that whoever you're getting into a new relationship with is a good parent, or a good person around kids, and that your kids get along with them. It doesn't have to be perfect all the time, but most of the time they have to get along very well. And you want someone who's not going to increase the level of stress for you or your children when you're entering into a second relationship or a new relationship. And one piece of statistics, I guess, that I think is really hopeful is that the level of happiness in new relationships tends to be much better than your first marriage. Usually that's because when you go through a separation divorce, a lot of people go through a very strong period of self-reflection to figure out, what went wrong in that old relationship and how do I prevent that from happening in a new relationship. And that leads to finding someone who you can have a relationship that's more compatible with your needs, and you're more intentional about how you go about your new relationship. So really think, how do I want to do this? What's the ideal? And what are the steps I have to take to get to that ideal? Doesn't mean that new relationships are going to be easy or without their challenges, but But I think if you take that intentional approach, it's going to make a big difference in your second relationship. You're much more likely to find someone that you connect with and that you can have that long-term relationship with.
Yeah, I love how
And sorry, I probably went on way too long there.
no, the way you describe taking that relationship and the grief, the hurt, the pain that may come with the loss of that relationship, and using it as a moment, when you're ready for self-reflection, for growth, for a learning opportunity, so that these individuals, as they are ready to enter into new relationships and search for new partners, they have the tools and they know, what worked and what didn't work for them. Not only in finding a partner, but just navigating a relationship, communication styles, and, exactly what you said, taking the steps to protect themselves and their assets, whether it's through a cohabitation agreement or a marriage contract. A lot of, clients that come through our doors are, searching for a cohab or a marriage contract because they've gone through the separation and divorce process the first time. It might not have been contentious or litigious, but just to have that knowledge and understanding to re-enter a new relationship, knowing that, there's a stigma around prenuptial agreements, and they're really to the benefit of both parties. And fortunately,
They
we're
really
seeing a lot
are.
of fortunately, we're seeing a lot of younger couples or first-time marriages taking the steps to protect their assets from the get-go. But I know historically there used to be such a stigma around having that type of agreement when entering into a relationship. But I think it's the
Yeah, and
opposite. I
I
think,
think collaborative is the best way to go through and get a cohabitation agreement too, because then you have two lawyers who are collaboratively trained, they're working together, they're friendly, they're on the same page, and they're helping both you and your spouse come up with an agreement that's reasonable for both of you. Yeah, I can't think of a better way to do that. And you're absolutely right, Steph. There is a stigma about getting a cohabitation agreement, but it is absolutely the right thing to do. And anytime I hear about a new couple who are getting together and they're about to move in together and they don't have one, my stomach just gets tied up in knots, and I'm like, oh, really should get a cohabitation agreement. Please do that.
yeah,
Such a good idea. I know it's not very romantic, but it's so important. And I have one with my spouse, and I don't anticipate us ever separating, but you just never know what's going to happen. And I just want to rest at night knowing that my kids are protected, my assets are protected, and I'm not going to go through a lengthy, court battle at the end of a relationship to sort all this out, because we've already done it. We did it when we were feeling happy and friendly and positive, and it's hard enough to go through a separation or divorce. Do you also want to add a lengthy court battle or legal dispute on top of that to figure out what's going to happen after separation? No, I'd say absolutely not.
yeah. And realistically, the best case scenario, it sits in a drawer and you never need it because you live happily ever
Yeah.
after. But on the off chance, things do happen, people change, especially, over years and events, and you grow as people. Sometimes it's together, sometimes it's apart. But at least you have that protection there.
And
Um,
you never know what stressors are going to come in your life that may not even be related to your relationship at all, but they can impact your relationship, right? Like, if your parents get really ill and you have to support them, or you lose your job, or one of your kids gets really sick, these are life events we don't have control over. They have a major impact on our relationship, and they can lead to marriage breakdowns that you can't foresee.
yeah, absolutely. And when we're looking at new partners, and Jonathan, you hit on a really important consideration about choosing or being intentional with your new partner, and really considering how that person may impact your children, right? Shanza, do you
Mhm.
mind maybe touching on, some ways that parents might consider introducing a new partner to children from a previous relationship?
Shanza's eyes were closing. We haven't heard from her, so now we woke her up from her nap. She's here.
Honestly, I feel like I can listen to all of you talk for hours. Like, it's just the way, like, Jonathan, Steph, Joe, you all articulate yourself. I'm like, thank you. Like, what you're speaking, like, everyone needs to hear this. And you guys have a way of, conveying this information. And I feel like I can be the audience here. Like, I can listen to you guys talk and yeah. Anyway.
We want to hear your knowledge though. You have so much of it. Share it with us, please.
Okay. All right. Yeah, but to answer your question, Steph, and coming back to our topic, introducing new partners, I think it's a sensitive topic, right? So, because of all the implications you guys have, talked about this past 45 minutes about, right? So, there can be a lot of implications on children and the family dynamic moving forward. So, it's always a good idea to think about how you're going to approach this topic with your children, with your ex. And Steph and Jonathan, you were talking about this earlier. Like, you want to communicate this to the co-parent before you talk to the children about it. As I do consultations, a lot of them, and even with my clients, like, I have so many people come up to me and they tell me everything was perfect. We had a perfect co-parenting relationship. One day my partners just changed and things are not the same anymore. And a lot of times that triggering event is a new partner. And the reason this happens in a lot of cases is because there hasn't been proper communication beforehand with the co-parent, with the children, before this new partner is brought into the lives of your, existing family and parenting arrangement. And so I think it's really important to kind of talk about, what considerations are there to take into account when you are communicating these things to your ex-partner, to your children. And some of the things that you want to think about is, first of all, timing and stability. When you're talking to your children, introducing a new partner soon after a separation can be really unsettling for them. For the most part, they may still be processing the changes in the family. It's good to wait because you want at least some stability, as we've talked about it, before you introduce a new partner, a potential step parent to your children. It's a big change for them. Wait until the relationship is more permanent. Even if you are in court, courts generally do encourage parents to ensure that the relationship is stable and likely to be long-term before you introduce a new partner to avoid any unnecessary disruption on the child's life. Communication with the other parent, transparency can be very beneficial. It can help prevent conflict and establishing co-parenting respect. Give a heads up to the other parent. And if you have a separation agreement, include provisions in there. We've all talked about that. The provisions could be anything about recurring mutual consent or notification or a time period. Clients will ask for, 6 months to a year before you're able to introduce new partners to the children. And so, if you have a separation agreement, you want to make sure you're following those provisions and you're in compliance with any agreements you've signed beforehand. So make sure you're doing that as well. Best interest of the child, Steph talked about that as well. Courts prioritize the children's best interest in family law. So you want to look at your child's comfort, their well-being, observe how the child responds, and ensure that any transitions, they're gradual, and you want to be respectful of your child's feelings. You want to look at how old they are, their developmental stage. And kind of take the conversation from there, depending on their age, how sensitive they are to the topic. And kind of make sure you are sensitive to your child's needs as you navigate these changes in your life and as you navigate communicating and introducing the new partner to the children. There are safety concerns there as well. So, if you are planning to introduce a new partner to your children, you want to make sure that your child's well-being is at the forefront. Any safety concerns, lifestyle differences, conflicting parenting styles, you want to make sure you're thinking about all those things. Because later on, if there are any complications, any disputes in regards to the parenting arrangement, who your new partner is, what are the implications of them getting involved in your children's life, all of this will be brought to the forefront, all of this will be addressed. So as you decide to introduce your new partner to your children, you want to make sure you're thinking about all these things. In terms of, doing those introductions with the children, make sure the introduction is smooth. Make sure the new partner respects your children and their existing parenting or the existing parenting arrangement, their feelings, to avoid any disputes, right? Introduce slowly, arrange a brief casual meeting, where the focus is not only on the new partner, you know, you could keep it light, make sure, there's not a lot of pressure, allow the children to get more comfortable, go at their pace, don't go at your pace, right? So you want to make sure that you're sensitive to their needs. Reassure the children. It's natural for them to worry about changes. They should know that they are the priority and they're the love, you love them, and a new partner will not change any of that, will not impact their relationship with you, and will not impact your love for them. And encourage dialogue, encourage communication with the children. Give them space to give them space to process their feelings, but give them an open space to express how they feel about the new partner. Acknowledge their feelings. They can be positive, they can be negative, but you want to give them that that environment, that space, that open dialogue where they're able to communicate with you, and where you're able to address their feelings and concerns that they have, and you're basically able to sit down with your child and have those conversations. You want to make sure you are able to do that with them. Overall, what I talked about, when deciding to introduce a parent, you want to make sure your focus is still a child-centered approach. They should be at the center. You shouldn't be at the center, your partner shouldn't be at the center, because children, they're sensitive, right? And they care about these things. And so you want to make sure you're addressing their feelings. Consider any impact your decision might have on your children. Consider the other parent as well and their perspective, because that will impact your parenting relationship with your children and your new partner. So make sure that you are kind of looping in the other parent in these conversations as well. And again, if you have a separation agreement, you want to make sure that you're complying with any provisions. And if you are in the process of getting one, you want to make sure you're kind of including some provisions in there in regards to new partners.
Yeah, thanks, Shanza. And that kind of flows nicely into this next topic about once a new partner has been integrated, maybe it's a few months, years down the line, however long it might take. But Joe, are there any, rights or legal responsibilities of new partners when they're entering this relationship with kids, for blended families?
Yeah, so the main person that is this new partner, we usually call them the step parent. Oftentimes parties remarry, or maybe they enter a common law relationship, but either or, the term step parent is tossed around quite often, whether or not the parties are married or not. But with respect to step parents' support obligations, Steph, I know touched on this a bit earlier. I'm just going to expand into it into a little bit more detail, but family law recognizes what's called in loco parentis, and that's a Latin term. Most of our legal terms are in Latin, but for those who are not fluent, it means standing in place of a parent. So, i.e., a step parent, in loco parentis, standing in place of a parent, and that's a specific status. And that status, if a court finds that a step parent is standing in place of a parent, that can obligate those parents, those step parents, to support children from their partner's prior relationship. And that's if they've taken on a parental role. And for this to apply, the step parent must have provided substantial support or assumed responsibilities, that are consistent with a parental role. This is an objective test. It's not something that is subjective. And the step parent will have to show evidence indicating that they did not have a settled intention to treat the child as their own. So that's sort of the key legal test, whether or not the step parent had a settled intention to treat the child as their own. If they did, then it's very likely that they would be standing in place of a parent, and then they would be in loco parentis. They would achieve that status, and then that could actually obligate them to support the children. And these obligations can arise even if the new relationship ends. Courts may consider the duration as well as the nature of the relationship between the step parent and the child. And once established, a step parent's support obligations can sometimes continue. However, those are usually secondary to those of biological parents, because as we mentioned before, biological parents have a duty to support their children financially. Moving now along to what's known as decision-making authority. That term was previously custody. However, that was changed in new legislation as of 2022. And step parents do not automatically acquire what's known as decision-making rights and decision-making responsibility or decision-making authority, however you coin the term, over their stepchildren unless these rights are formally granted either by the legal parent or through legal actions or through the courts. Key decisions such as medical care, education, or even religious upbringing, these are typically reserved for the biological parents. And if a blended family wants to formalize decision-making authority, guardianship may be an option. And guardianship grants the step parent authority to make decisions on behalf of the child. However, this process does require court involvement as well as parental consent. With respects to the parental rights through adoption, so in Ontario, step parents can actually apply to adopt their stepchildren to gain full parental rights, so full decision-making authority. And this is a formal legal process that requires the consent of both biological parents, unless, of course, one parent's rights have been terminated by the court. And adoption confers all parental rights and responsibilities to the adoptive parent, meaning they become legally recognized as the child's parent in all aspects, including inheritance rights, support obligations, as well as decision-making authority. And this process is generally straightforward, as always is. Everything is normally straightforward, and that's if all parties consent. However, it does provide legal security as well as stability in blended families by formally recognizing the new parents or the new partner's role, I should say, as a parent.
Thanks so much, Joe. Yeah, there's so many different components and things to consider. Shanza, do you maybe have a few tips for those separated spouses who are maybe ready to enter into the dating world, and especially this new age of dating where there's so much technology and apps and things like that, things to maybe keep in mind or consider?
Yeah, of course. Dating apps, let's talk about those, eh? But now, navigating dating apps after a divorce can be a big step for people. You are out of one relationship and now you're ready to explore. It's normal to feel nervous. In terms of tips, I think first, it's good to take a moment to reflect on your past relationship. And Jonathan expressed some, great thoughts about that. But generally, I would say do that, reflect on your past relationship. This can give you a clearer picture of what you're looking for now. When you're ready, think about what your intentions are, whether you are open to a more serious relationship, just meeting new people, or something more casual. It's always, I think, good to be mindful of your own boundaries. I think that's really important. Divorce often involves, a range of emotions, and it's natural to be protective of your boundaries. So go at a pace that you feel comfortable, be authentic, and move at your own pace. Safety is also important. Think dating apps, social media, meeting in public places at first, letting a friend know where you'll be, because if you're out of a relationship, you're probably a little bit rusty when it comes to dating. So, if you have children, you want to perform due diligence, and that can never hurt, such as even online searches or background checks may be a reasonable precaution sometimes. You just want to make sure that you're keeping a safe, stable environment for the children. That should always be the priority. Um, Whenever you decide to, whoever you decide to date will become relevant, especially if later on there are concerns about them. So, when you are dating, it's good to take those steps early on, and make sure that, your new partner, is it good for the kids? Are they safe? Are you taking the necessary precautions to make sure that there's the kids' safety is always at the forefront. And talking more about children, privacy and boundaries also come into play here. You want to manage your children's exposure to your online dating, and you always want to set boundaries, even with your ex about dating, just to avoid confusion and potential legal disputes in the future. You want to address it timely. With younger children, it's always best to, keep dating life discreet. You want to ensure they're not exposed to, like we said, short-term relationships. Older children, they can get curious. They may ask questions. So it's helpful to communicate at an age-appropriate level with your children as you're navigating dating apps and social media and meeting new people. And let's talk more about social media. You want to be mindful of what you share on social media. We had a webinar on this topic a couple weeks ago. Social media and posting online about anything about children, about your new relationships. Because what you post online can be used, right? You're leaving online evidence, you're leaving online proof, and if there are later on any concerns about, the stability of your children's lives, if there are any concerns about the new partner or you and how you're parenting your children, and you have social media posts online, then those can really come in and can either bite you or they can assist you as well. So keep personal matters private for the most part. You want to, especially if you have any disputes, legal disputes going on, or if you are, fresh out of separation, you want to make sure that you're mindful of what you're posting online. Um, and any potential implications of any posts that you're making and any pictures that you're posting online. Just be mindful of those. I think overall, don't rush the process. After a significant relationship like a marriage or a cohabitation, or if you were cohabiting, it's natural to feel a bit rusty with dating. Give yourself time, give yourself grace. Enjoy the process of getting to know people and don't rush into anything that doesn't feel right. Um, Online dating can be overwhelming, emotionally, and even as you've talked about, legal implications of your new partner and your new relationship. So it's good to approach this topic more prepared.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Shanza. Yeah, online dating and the apps these days, it can be a terrifying place, I could only imagine. So, Jonathan, do you mind maybe just taking a few minutes to wrap us up and touch on, maybe how mediation could come into play in resolving conflicts arising from new relationships, and maybe share any strategies that you have for managing all these emotional transitions? I know you touched a little bit about that, but any kind of final tips or remarks?
Yeah, so family mediation is a great process because you have two people coming together with a facilitator, the mediator, who's a neutral person. And most mediators are trained not only in the legal stuff, so they know about child support and spousal support and parenting plans and blah, 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 but many of them also know about the emotional aspects of it. And so they can help manage the emotions that come up when you're in a conflict with your ex over a new relationship. So a collaborative family law might be another good option. So if you've already been through collaborative and that's how you got your separation agreement, go back to the people, if you trust them, if you like them, if you got good service from them, go back to the people that you use, the team that you already know. So, when you go to court, it's an adversarial process. It sets you up against the other person. Relationships break down there. It's a terrible place. So mediation is much better. And in terms of like managing the emotional transition to a new relationship, I'll just go back to what I've already said. Be critical of yourself. View your own patterns of behavior from a critical eye, and try to focus on developing new patterns and new relationships. Get therapy. It's really, really helpful. It's not just for Hollywood actors. It actually works for people who are going through this major transition in your life. We're social animals. We rely on other people for a lot of things. Why not rely on people when you're going through a really difficult transition? Therapists are really well trained to help you and help ask the questions that are going to get you to reflect on what your old relationship was like and why it broke down and what would be good in a new relationship. Even just, sometimes I have conversations with clients just to tell them these are the factors that we know about from research that make a healthy relationship more likely. So just even knowing those factors can be a really big way of making sure your next relationship is happy and healthy and meets your needs.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. That's great advice and tips to leave our audience with. This has been such a pleasure. Today was such an interesting topic, and we really appreciate all of our viewers for tuning in on Zoom and live on YouTube. For those of our Zoom attendees following the webinar, a brief survey will appear. Please share your comments, any suggestions you have for future topics. Your feedback is always greatly appreciated. Also, as Joe mentioned, to take advantage of the opportunity for a complimentary 20-minute meeting with one of our lawyers, please provide the code after hours. You can telephone in, you can call our office. We do have operators standing by, or you can email our intake department at intake@russellalexander.com to schedule your appointment. Also, registration is open for our next event, Divorce and Mental Health Support. So that's coming up on November 5th. Just go to russellalexander.com/family law now to register.
And it's the same crew.
It is the same crew. You will see us again next week. So until then, have a lovely evening, rest of your week. Stay safe. Thank you again to our panelists. It's a pleasure as always. And thank you again to our audience members for tuning into Family Law Now After Hours. Take care, everyone.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.